I see this little boy. What's he trying to show me? I don't feel normal. Anger inside of me, it's building and building and building, and I feel like at any moment I'm going to explode.
These are the true stories of real cases and the psychics who help investigators solve their most baffling mysteries.
Mom? Dad?
Columbus 911, what's your emergency?
My phone's on the floor, my mother's on the floor, there's blood all over the place.
Is there anybody else in the house with you?
I don't know what's going on, I assume it was a broken.
Is there anyone else here, sir?
They're bleeding out. Just get down there, would you send someone down here?
I need the address, please.
Car 32, I copy. I'll be en route to 1615 Stringtown Road. Initially, we were dispatched to 1615 Stringtown Road, which is a residence in southern Franklin County. The initial call came in from a Robert Cawley, who had called and said he had found Charles and Lois Cawley dead at their home. As the officers arrived on the scene and entered the residence, they found Mrs. Cawley lying in the kitchen. Mr. Cawley was lying in the dining room. Both of them still had their coats on, and it appeared as though they had been attacked as soon as they walked through the door. Both bodies were covered in blood. Both of them appeared as though they had been stabbed multiple times. Officers found guns, VCR, clock radio, adding machines, things of that nature stacked by the front door. There was broken glass on the back steps. It looked like somebody had broken in through the back door. The scene appeared as though a burglary had taken place.
The double murder shocks Columbus and makes front-page news.
These are victims in their 60s, found together, bludgeoned and stabbed to death. It was a big story for Grove City because this is a suburb just south of Columbus that doesn't see a lot of crime.
Detective Zach Scott opens a murder investigation.
Several things suggested to us that there might be two people involved, at least, with two victims, with how the crime scene appeared when we were there.
Charles was a large man who probably could have defended himself against multiple attackers. So the theory was that he would not go down easily without a fight.
The crime scene itself looked like it may have been first-time burglars attempting to do a burglary, but were inexperienced on the proper way to pull one off. And it looked like to me that they were interrupted during the process of committing this burglary. I checked with the officers that worked the area for the night of the attack to see what kind of citations they issued. If there's any suspicious persons in the area, I was looking for witnesses and maybe might catch a suspect in that area. Unfortunately, the reports did not produce anything of any value. We also canvassed the area where the Cawleys lived, talked to the neighbors, but unfortunately no one saw anything out of the ordinary.
Zach Scott talks to the Cawley family to see if they can point them in the right direction.
As part of a routine investigation of this nature, we always talk to all family members. You want to get to know your victims as intimately as you can. And Robert Cawley was the first person that was at the scene and called police. He went there to borrow a tool. He hadn't heard from his parents over the weekend. So he had a reason for going to just check on them.
The coroner estimates the Cawleys were killed the night before Robert found their bodies.
Robert told us that that particular evening he was at a hockey game. After the hockey game, he went home to his wife, Celeste. We talked to Celeste, his wife, and she corroborated what he said, stating that he did come home right after the hockey game.
Cawley's alibi checks out. Police still have no suspects. Desperate to solve the double murder, police look for links to other break-ins in the area.
In the beginning part of the investigation, we interviewed probably 25 to 30 different people.
512 still en route on the phone, be there shortly.
Unfortunately, all the people that we initially talked to didn't produce any additional information that we could use.
What authorities told us about the Colley murders was that it was going to be difficult to solve without someone coming forward with either a vital piece of information or a confession.
As months pass by, information from the public dries up. But one call from a local psychic gives Detective Scott some hope.
This is Detective Scott.
I had met Zach Scott through a friend and told him that if he ever needed any help on any cases, that I would gladly offer my help to them as my way of giving back.
To catch the killer, Scott agrees to work with the psychic.
I'm a pretty open-minded detective. I'll take any kind of help if it's going to help me solve a crime. When Tanner called, he said that, yeah, he would like to look at some crime scene photos, and I selected a few that gave him an opportunity to review.
When I actually hold a crime scene photo, it's almost as if I become that person. I can feel their emotions or their impressions. It's almost like I can see through your eyes. I see someone, I see a figure, a dark figure. And he's inside the house. He's in the house. Who is this? I can't see his face. He's by himself. He's alone. Right away, I felt that there was not more than one person involved. This was a lone killer, and it was something very personal.
But police say the Colleys were murdered by at least 2 burglars. One theory must be wrong. Psychic Tana Hoy has joined the investigation into Charles and Lois Coley's murder. The psychic's vision shows a lone killer committing the grisly crime.
I see this little boy. What does this boy want? What's he trying to show me? I see blood. I see blood on hands. I see water. He's moving around the house. He's searching. His hands are moving everywhere. He's taking them. He doesn't want anyone to know. He breaks the window. He breaks it, but he breaks it inside the house. He's inside the house. I called Detective Scott to tell him what I was picking up.
Hi, Zach Tana Hoy.
At the beginning, they had said to me that they thought that it was a burglary, and I told them this was not a burglary.
This was definitely somebody that did this alone.
This was not more than one person involved. This was somebody that was very familiar with these people, who held a lot of hatred and anger. And it was going to be somebody that nobody in the beginning would have suspected.
When police take another look at the evidence, the psychic's intuition begins to make sense.
The closer we looked at the scene, the less it looked like a burglary. The items that were selected by the burglars looked mostly like something a child would pick up. It was a BB gun, costume jewelry, a adding machine, a telephone. Another indicator to us at the crime scene that led me to believe possibly that it was a staged burglary was the fact that there was more glass on the outside of the door than there was inside. Someone had hit the window from the inside, wanting us to believe that this is where the perpetrators had entered from. The reason that someone, in my opinion, would stage a burglary of this nature is because they knew their victims and they wanted to throw the cops off. There was no doubt in my mind after reviewing everything that Charles and Lois Colley absolutely knew their killer. We first started looking at business associates. We looked at people around the area that maybe they had enemies, that they were not getting along with. But I mean, even with business associates, you could not get one bad word ever said about these people. They were great people.
Police remain baffled why anyone would want to harm the Colleys. Then, a call comes in that could break the case wide open.
We got a call from a manager of a restaurant who said that one of his customers was in the restaurant the night the Colleys was murdered, and she was acting very strange. She was seen on the same night the Colleys were murdered. She was seen in the same proximity of where they lived.
Can the investigators track down the mysterious woman? Detective Zach Scott follows up a lead on a mysterious woman. She was seen acting suspiciously the night the Colleys were killed.
It was really late, and the restaurant manager said she was acting nervous. Seemed like she was looking for someone, like she was afraid. Acted like she needed to leave. And from her actions, he felt strong enough to give us a call. We were eventually able to identify who that person was, and so we were able to go and talk to her. The investigation showed us that she had nothing to do with any of the deaths of the family. She was just down there in the area.
Police are still without a prime suspect. The case stalls.
In Columbus, we were dealing with other murders, other crimes. We were waiting for the police to take some action. We lost interest in the case because we didn't have anything to write about.
We weren't getting any leads. My fears about this case was that it may never be solved.
But then I started getting impressions of the Colley murder again. I leave myself totally open so that I am able to receive impressions and feelings and visions at any time. Just in my everyday life, just in an instant, something will come to me.
I want to be happy like all the other kids, but I'm not. If just everybody knew my secret, if everybody knew. I see everyone being confused. I see violence, anger. I don't feel normal. I don't feel normal. I don't feel normal. I hear screaming. I feel like it's done. It's finally over.
And at that moment, I knew right away very clearly who killed the Colleys. All through this case, I kept seeing a little boy, and I couldn't figure out what it meant. And then suddenly I realized what I was being shown. This little boy was representative of Robert Colley. I knew it was Robert Colley who killed his parents.
Detective Scott isn't surprised by the psychic's claim. He's beginning to have his own suspicions about Robert Cauley.
Eventually, we started focusing our investigation on Robert Cauley. There were several factors that came into play. We felt the burglary was staged.
And Robert Cauley's demeanor has changed over the course of the investigation.
Part of the behavior of a victim of a crime or a family member is they keep in touch with us. They want to know the progress of the investigation. Sometimes they just want to talk to you, just to have that connection. Robert showed no interest. In a lot of ways, Tana was helpful in confirming for us that we were on the right trail.
Detective Scott sets his sights on Robert Cauley, but when he decides to bring him in for questioning, Cauley is nowhere to be found.
As our investigation continued, Robert Cauley decided to move away from Columbus.
Is Robert Cauley a killer on the run? Robert Cauley is now the prime suspect in the murder of his parents.
During the investigation, we were able to trace his whereabouts through family members, and it showed that he went to New York for a while. He went to the state of Washington. He also went to Phoenix. Eventually, we were able to locate Robert Cauley in Houston, Texas.
Scott makes plans to question Cauley in Houston.
At this point in time, we suspected Robert Cauley of committing these homicides, but we had no physical evidence to link him to them. We had nothing up to this point, so getting a confession from him was crucial.
Before he leaves to confront Cauley, Detective Scott meets with Tana Hoy face to face.
I had a vision of Robert Cauley, and I wanted to tell the sheriff's department about it.
Here are just additional photos of the crime scene that were taken.
I could feel and see and hear. This was not just a moment of insanity.
This was kind of building and kind of boiling up and welling up in him.
This was a long-held resentment, an anger, a pain, a hurt that he had carried since childhood towards his father.
This murder was almost inevitable to happen considering the circumstances.
Tana was adamantly saying, yeah, that is the suspect. He is the one who's killed his parents. And we felt that, okay, that's how we feel also, but now we got to figure out how to catch him.
When I was tuning into his energy again, I felt like somebody that had been scapegoated by his father. I never lived up, couldn't get my father's approval, and held so much hatred and anger as a result of this disapproval.
Do I feel that Tana was probably accurate in that? Yeah, I do feel he was accurate in that assessment of the suspect.
Detective Scott flies to Houston. Robert Cauley agrees to talk to the investigator one more time.
During the initial part of the interrogation with Robert, he pretty much stayed with, I don't know anything, I don't have any additional information I can give you.
The interview continues for 9 grueling hours.
Eventually, Robert began to change his story. Robert explained that he'd went to his parents' house after the hockey game, and then things turned bad.
The next thing I know, I got somebody screaming at me, telling me that I'm a failure, and that I'm no good. I think I stabbed my dad first. I messed up. My mom tried to stop me. I think my dad fell down, and while trying to get away from her or something, I think I accidentally stabbed her.
Robert Cauley is charged with murdering his parents. His trial lasts for 15 days.
Some of the jurors winced and looked away while they heard this tape being played in the courtroom and hearing of this brutal attack by a son against his parents.
Cawley is found guilty and sentenced to 25 years.
Tana was able to give some insight to the psychology behind him, which is where I would credit him.
I was just glad I could help. I was grateful for the respect that they actually gave me, and it surprised me. And I was glad that they had enough confidence in me to trust me to work with them to help them solving this case.
I see the psychics as a tool, as an option, if they are connected in the right area that you need, and I think a detective would be a fool not to use that option if it was available.